It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon hike. Ethan had taken this trail behind his cabin dozens of times: dense forest, crisp air, and the sound of birds echoing through the trees. He loved the peace out there, the way nature didn't ask questions or expect answers. But on this particular day, something felt different. The woods were too still, too quiet. No birdsong. No rustling leaves. Just silence, and then a weak, heartbreaking whimper that cut through the air like a knife. He froze. The sound came again, barely audible, but unmistakable. A cry. And not a human one. Ethan turned off the path and pushed through the brush, his boots crunching dead leaves and twigs. The deeper he went, the louder the cries became, until he finally found the source: a dog. Skinny, mud-covered, and shaking with fear. It lay curled near the base of a tree, a deep wound on its side, its breathing shallow and labored. It looked like it had been out there for days. Without thinking, Ethan dropped to his knees. "Hey, buddy, it's okay, I got you." The dog flinched but didn't run. Maybe it couldn't. Maybe it knew Ethan was its only chance. He took off his jacket and wrapped the animal gently, lifting it in his arms. It was heavier than it looked, but Ethan didn't care. He made his way back to the trail and hurried home, heart pounding, not from fear, but something else. He didn't know it yet, but saving this dog would change his life forever. Back at his cabin, Ethan did what he could. He cleaned the wound, gave the dog water, and made a soft bed in front of the fireplace. Hours passed. The dog didn't eat but stayed awake, watching Ethan with tired but alert eyes. That night, as the wind howled through the trees, Ethan couldn't sleep. Something about the dog haunted him. Where had it come from? What had hurt it? And why had it been out there alone? The next morning, Ethan woke to a scratching noise at the door. The dog, still weak, was pawing to go out. Ethan opened the door, expecting it to limp out and find a quiet place to rest. But instead, it turned and looked at him. Waited. Then it walked. Slowly, but with purpose. As if it wanted him to follow. Ethan hesitated. "You want me to come with you?" The dog paused and looked back again, eyes locked on his. Curiosity outweighed caution. He grabbed his coat and followed. They walked deeper into the woods than Ethan had ever dared to go. The terrain grew unfamiliar: thicker trees, hidden paths, strange silence. The dog moved slower now but with certainty. And then, it stopped. At first, Ethan didn't see it. Then his eyes adjusted. Camouflaged beneath a blanket of moss and brush was a metal door, half buried in the ground. Rusted. Locked with a thick chain. A bunker? Ethan stepped closer, heart thudding. Why would a dog lead him here? He reached for the lock, unsure of what he was about to find. And as his fingers touched the cold metal, a faint noise echoed from inside. Something, or someone, was down there. And they weren't alone. Ethan froze, his hand still resting on the rusted lock. The sound he'd just heard wasn't just an echo or an animal. It was deliberate. A soft thud, maybe a shuffle. Something, or someone, was definitely inside that bunker. The air around him felt colder, heavier, like the forest itself was holding its breath. The dog, still standing beside him, let out a low, cautious whine. Its ears pinned back and its eyes stayed locked on the bunker door. Ethan looked down at it, whispering, "What did you bring me to?" He tried the lock. It was old, but solid. No chance of breaking it by hand. He stepped back, scanning the area. Why was there a hidden bunker out here, miles away from any marked trail? And who builds something like this in the middle of nowhere? Ethan wasn't a paranoid man. But ever since he returned from his last deployment overseas, he'd had a hard time trusting silence. After years in the army, he'd learned to read his surroundings like a language. And right now, every instinct in him was screaming, something's wrong. He took out his phone, no signal. Of course. Too deep in the woods. He snapped a few pictures of the bunker and marked the spot on his GPS app, just in case. The bunker's door was almost fully hidden by fallen branches and overgrowth. No way this was an accident. Someone wanted this place to stay hidden. He glanced back at the dog. You don't belong out here either, do you? The dog wagged its tail faintly, then sat down, still watching the door like it expected it to open. Ethan knew he couldn't leave it alone. Not after what he'd heard. But he also couldn't break in with his bare hands. He needed tools. Something to cut that lock. Maybe even a flashlight. Whatever was in there, he wasn't going in unprepared. He turned back toward the trail. Come on, let's get what we need. Back at the cabin, he gathered what he could: bolt cutters, a headlamp, a pocket knife, and an old handheld radio. The dog lay on the porch, watching every move he made like it knew this was far from over. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a lost animal. Maybe it was the way the dog had looked at him, like it had chosen him for a reason. Maybe it was the bunker, buried like a secret too dangerous to share. Or maybe it was that sound. That one, soft noise that made his skin crawl. Night fell fast in the woods. Ethan thought about waiting until morning, but part of him knew time might matter. Whoever, or whatever, was in that bunker could be running out of it. The next morning, just after sunrise, Ethan and the dog made their way back. The forest seemed to shift around them. The air was colder. Even the birds seemed quieter. The bunker looked exactly as they left it, except now, the door was cracked open. Just an inch. But enough. Enough to know someone had been watching. Enough to know he wasn't alone out here. Ethan crouched low, heart pounding. He didn't speak. He just listened. And from deep inside the darkness, a voice whispered, "Help, please." But what chilled Ethan more wasn't the voice itself. It was the sound of chains moving behind it. Ethan gripped the bolt cutters tighter, pulse thudding in his ears. The door wasn't open like that yesterday. Someone had either come out, or gone in. But the whisper, that broken, fragile voice, still echoed in his mind. "Help, please." And the dragging sound of chains? That wasn't something he could ignore. The dog growled low, tail stiff, body tense. It moved in front of Ethan like it was guarding him, eyes locked on the crack in the bunker door. Ethan reached out, gently pushing the door open farther with the end of the bolt cutters. A wave of cold air swept out from inside, damp, metallic, and something else, something that smelled like rust and time. "Is someone down there?" he called out, his voice shaking just enough for him to notice. Silence. Then, again, barely above a whisper, "Don't leave me." He turned on his headlamp and stepped forward, slow and careful. The dog didn't follow. Instead, it sat by the entrance, unmoving. Like it had done its part, and wasn't going any farther. Ethan descended the narrow metal stairs, one step at a time. The deeper he went, the more the light faded behind him. He hit the bottom and found a narrow hallway lined with old pipes and exposed wiring. The air was damp, thick, and smelled faintly of oil. There were doors, 3 of them. The first one was open. Inside, just a rusted cot, a broken lamp, and piles of dust. The second door was half closed, the hinges groaning as he nudged it. Inside that room, something was scratched into the wall over and over again, "Don't trust them." Dozens of times, carved deep. The third door was where the sound came from. It was locked with a heavy sliding bolt from the outside. Ethan leaned close. "I'm here." "Who are you?" A pause. Then the voice again, a little stronger. "They locked me in. Years ago. Please, don't let them find me again." "Years?" He stared at the bolt. Everything in him said wait, think, ask more questions. But his hand moved anyway. He slid the lock back. The door creaked open. Inside, crouched in the far corner, was a young woman. Thin, pale, clothes torn and stained. Her eyes squinted at the light from his headlamp. Her wrists were raw, chained to the wall by thick iron cuffs. But it wasn't just her condition that stopped Ethan cold, it was what she said next. "They're watching. Even now. You shouldn't have come." "Who?" he asked, voice low. "The ones who built this place. They're not done. They never left." He stepped inside, trying to find a way to remove the chains. "Who are you?" "My name's Leah," she whispered. "I escaped once. But they caught me again. They don't let anyone leave." Ethan's stomach twisted. "Are you saying there are more people down here?" "No," she said slowly. "Not people. Not anymore." Upstairs, above ground, the dog began barking wildly. Ethan turned toward the bunker door. And that's when he heard the footsteps. Not from inside the bunker. But outside. In the woods. More than one pair. Heavy. Slow. Coming closer. Deliberate. And then, the unmistakable metallic click of a rifle being loaded. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. That sound, the rifle being cocked, wasn't something you could mistake. It was slow, loud, like whoever was out there wanted him to hear it. Leah's eyes widened. She heard it too. "They found you," she whispered. "They always do." Ethan backed out of the small room and pressed the bunker door shut, careful not to let it slam. His heart pounded in his chest, hands slick with sweat. He switched off his headlamp and crouched in the hallway, listening. The dog was barking non-stop now, frantic and sharp, the sound echoing through the woods above them. Then suddenly, silence. No more barking. No footsteps. Just dead quiet. Leah pulled herself upright, chains clinking softly. "They'll come down. When they do, don't fight. Just hide. Fighting only makes them angry." Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run. But where? This place had one exit. And right now, it was being watched. Or worse. Guarded. He needed to think. Fast. He looked around the hallway. Pipes, loose panels, old vents. He saw one near the ceiling, wide enough for a person, maybe. He pointed to it. "Does that lead out?" Leah nodded slowly. "Eventually. But you'll need to cut the chain first. Ethan pulled his bolt cutters from his pack, hands shaking. He knelt beside her and worked quickly, silently. The iron clamped down with a loud snap. The chain cracked, then fell away with a heavy clink. They froze. Footsteps again. This time closer. Right above the bunker. Then a dull thud, metal hitting metal. They were trying to seal the hatch. Ethan's heart sank. They're locking us in. He grabbed Leah's arm and helped her up. She limped, clearly weak, but moved with urgency. Together, they climbed onto an old storage crate. Ethan pried open the vent cover. Dust poured out, along with the musty scent of stale air. He helped Leah crawl in first, then followed behind her, dragging the bolt cutters with him. The tunnel was narrow and pitch black, filled with cobwebs and strange scrawls on the walls, names, dates, scratched warnings like no light, no sound, no escape. Every inch they moved felt tighter. The metal groaned around them, like it hadn't been touched in years. Behind them, the bunker door slammed open. Heavy boots hit the floor. Voices, muffled, deep, not yelling, whispering. Like they didn't need to shout. Like they already knew where their prey was going. Ethan pushed Leah forward faster. The vent split into two paths, left and right. No map. No clues. Just instinct. He picked left. The metal felt colder now, almost frozen. Ethan's breath fogged the air. And then they heard it again, not behind them this time, but ahead. Another whisper. Not Leah's. Not his. You're too late. Leah stopped crawling. She was trembling. We should have gone right, she said, voice cracking. We took the wrong path. Then, ahead of them, a faint red glow began to pulse inside the vent. Slow, rhythmic. Like a warning. Ethan reached for his flashlight but hesitated. Something was moving in that light. Crawling. Not human. Not animal. Just, wrong. Leah turned to him, panic in her voice. You don't understand. They don't just trap people. They turn them. And then, behind them, a new sound echoed through the vent, metal dragging against metal. Someone else was following. Or, something. Ethan didn't dare move. The dragging behind them grew louder, sharper, like something was scraping long claws against the vent walls. Leah gripped his sleeve, her fingers trembling. The red glow ahead flickered again, casting eerie shadows across the metal surface, and in that flicker, Ethan caught a glimpse of something, just for a second. A face. But it wasn't human. Its eyes were wide, glassy, glowing faintly like the bunker lights, and its mouth moved with no sound, just breath and motion, as if repeating something over and over. Then it vanished into the darkness. Leah whispered, "We have to go back. We can't go forward." Ethan shook his head. "There's something behind us. There's something ahead. What do they want from you?" She hesitated. "They used to be scientists," she said slowly. "Not soldiers, not monsters. They built the bunker for experiments. Isolation, control, human behavior. They brought people here to study them. Me, my brother, and others. But something went wrong. Whatever they tested, it changed them. They didn't just study fear. They became it." Her words barely landed before the red glow disappeared, plunging the vent into complete black. Then came a new sound. A low mechanical hum. It was distant at first, but quickly grew louder. And suddenly, air rushed through the vents, like the tunnel had turned into a giant vacuum. The force pulled at Ethan's clothes, tugging him backward. Leah screamed and clutched the sides of the metal tube. "They're flushing the vents," she cried. "It's part of containment." Then he walked out, leaving Elaine standing in a cold silence that felt heavier than before. She tried to follow, but by the time she reached the street, the van and the suited man were gone. No lights, no tire marks. Just the quiet hum of power returning to the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Evelyn moved through the subway tunnels with speed that didn't match her frail appearance. She held Hope close, whispering to her in a language that didn't sound like any Elaine had ever heard, soft, rhythmic syllables, like a lullaby and a code all at once. Hope stayed calm in her arms, eyes wide open, following the darkness as if she knew exactly where they were going. What Evelyn didn't know was that someone else was following her, someone who had been in the tunnels longer than either of them. He called himself Lark, and he was once part of the same biotech program that created Hope. But he had defected when he found out the truth, that the children weren't being saved, they were being programmed. Lark lived in the shadows now, off the grid, keeping track of each subject the agency had created. He thought Evelyn was dead. Seeing her alive, and carrying Hope, made his blood run cold. He watched from a distance as she reached an old steel door deep beneath Grand Central Station. She tapped a series of symbols onto a rusted keypad, and the door creaked open. Inside was a hidden lab. Or what was left of it. Broken monitors. Cracked tanks. Syringe trays tossed on the ground. And one last terminal still blinking faintly with power. Evelyn sat down, cradled Hope on her lap, and began typing furiously, feeding data into the system. Back at the precinct, Detective Reeves received a package with no return address. Inside was a flash drive and a photograph, Evelyn holding a baby. The timestamp was from 7 months ago. The image was tagged, Subject 0, Viable. Reeves plugged in the drive and found a video, grainy, surveillance-style footage from an underground lab. Scientists in hazmat suits. A child suspended in a glass pod. One of the researchers stepped forward and spoke to the camera. "This is the final warning. Project Echo has been compromised. If Subject 0 escapes, the signal will activate." Signal? Reeves froze. That hum Elaine had mentioned. The same one she herself had recorded but couldn't trace. It wasn't just a sound. It was a frequency. Hope wasn't just born, she had been released. Now, as Evelyn typed faster, Lark stepped out of the shadows behind her and whispered, "You shouldn't have brought her back." Evelyn didn't even flinch. "I had no choice." Lark stepped closer. "You've started the countdown." Evelyn turned around slowly. It was already counting down. From the moment she took her first breath. And then, somewhere far above ground, every electrical grid in a 6-block radius dimmed, and the hum grew louder. The tunnel began to rumble. A sharp burst of air hissed through the vent behind them. The noise was growing louder again. Something was coming. And fast. "We have to keep moving," Ethan said, trying to push the panic down. They crawled through the final stretch of the emergency tunnel until they reached a heavy steel grate. Through it, a ladder led upward, toward what looked like a manhole. Ethan climbed first and pushed it open. A blast of sunlight poured in, nearly blinding after the hours of darkness. They emerged in a clearing just a few hundred yards from where Ethan had first found the dog. Trees swayed gently. Birds chirped overhead. The sudden return to normalcy felt surreal, too quiet, too clean. Ethan helped Leah out of the tunnel, both of them breathing hard. But before he could say anything, he heard the sound of engines, multiple vehicles approaching fast. He turned to see 3 black SUVs racing through the trees, tires crunching over dirt and leaves. "They're here," Leah whispered. Ethan grabbed her hand. "We run." But before they could, a man stepped out from the lead SUV. Tall, suited, calm. He raised a hand. "Ethan," the man called out. "It's over. You finished your part. Come home." Ethan stared at him. Something in his voice felt familiar. Leah backed away, tugging Ethan's arm. "That's Dr. Klein. He ran the program. He's not here to help you. He's here to put you back under." But Ethan didn't move. His mind was spinning. The memories, his time in the facility, the endless tests, the fear, were flooding back. He remembered Leah now. Her brother. The escape attempt. The explosion in the lower lab. The reason he was the only one who got out. "I was the experiment," he muttered. Dr. Klein smiled. "You still are." Leah raised something from her coat pocket, an old keycard. She held it up. "We can expose them. This has everything. Names. Footage. Locations." Ethan looked between her and Dr. Klein. The vehicles behind him began to spread out. Men in tactical gear emerged, weapons drawn. Then, just as Ethan was about to run, his dog stepped into the clearing. Only it wasn't limping anymore. Its eyes glowed faintly red. And it spoke, in Ethan's voice. "You brought us exactly where we needed to go." Ethan's world tilted. The dog, his dog, the one he'd pulled from the river, carried through the woods, fed, trusted, stood still in the sunlight, its body calm, but its eyes glowing faintly like the bunker lights. And its voice, his voice, echoed again, "You brought us exactly where we needed to go." He staggered back, every instinct screaming that this wasn't real. But deep down, a part of him already knew. Nothing about that day had ever been chance. Not the dog. Not the bunker. Not even Leah. Dr. Klein stepped forward slowly, his tone still calm. "You were programmed to forget. But the memory was never gone. Just hidden, until now. The animal was a failsafe. A tracker. We knew if you reconnected with the field, your instincts would take over. And they did." Leah moved closer to Ethan, holding out the keycard. "Don't listen to him. You still have a choice. That card holds everything, the original experiment files, video logs, subject data, even your own sessions. It's enough to bring them down." Ethan took it, staring at the worn plastic. It felt heavier than it looked. He could hear the men behind Klein readying their weapons, waiting for a command. The air around them was still, tense, like nature itself was holding its breath. Then he looked at the dog, no, the creature, and for the first time, he saw it for what it was. Not just a tool or an experiment, but a warning. A reminder of how far the people in that bunker had gone. Of how much of his life had been shaped by people who saw him as nothing more than data. He turned to Leah. "Can you get this out? To the public?" She nodded. "I have people. They've been waiting for a signal. Ethan took a deep breath. Then, without a word, he flung the keycard deep into the woods. Toward a ridge Leah had pointed out earlier, where her contact was waiting with a drone. The moment the card left his hand, he saw Dr. Klein's face change. Calm turned to panic. "Stop them!" Klein shouted. But it was too late. A soft whoosh echoed in the air, followed by a faint blinking light in the sky. The drone had seen the signal. Picked up the data. It was gone. Everything the bunker tried to hide was now out. The men lowered their weapons, unsure of what to do without orders. The dog took a few steps forward, then stopped, its eyes fading to their original soft brown. It tilted its head, then sat, quiet, still. Like something had switched off. Ethan knelt beside it, unsure whether to fear it or thank it. Maybe it really had tried to help him. Maybe even inside the programming, a trace of loyalty had survived. Behind him, Klein was being restrained by his own men, some of whom were already receiving alerts on their radios. Word was spreading fast. Whistleblower drops. Media leaks. The truth was finally out. Ethan turned to Leah, who looked just as exhausted as he felt. "What now?" he asked. She gave a tired smile. "Now, we stop running." As they walked out of the woods together, Ethan glanced back one last time. The forest was silent again. Peaceful. But he knew it wouldn't stay that way forever. Somewhere out there, other bunkers still existed. Other experiments. Other stories waiting to be uncovered. But today, one had ended. And the man who once forgot who he was, finally remembered.